The TYR DropZero Laced version. So this is not going to be my full performance review. I've had a lot of folks ask about this shoe, and I know some folks don't feel like waiting until my full review, so I wanted to put this video together and talk about some first impressions that I have with this model and also compare them to the Primus Lite Knit so you can get a good lay of the land on if this shoe is worth it and if you should invest in them. But 5 first impressions that I have with the DropZero Laced version is number 1, the toe break in this shoe is a lot better than the both strap version and the Primus Lite Knit in my opinion. The toe break up here isn't as aggressive. So with this knit construction here, you don't have a TPU overlay or anything that's super harsh here, putting a ton of pressure into the top of the foot. So in the strap version, for example, I found the lateral forefoot to have a little bit of pressure. With this model, you have an outsole wrap that wraps up, but it doesn't really have an impact on the comfort of the shoe and how it breaks in. So I think that's a nice feature of this model that the other two shoes that I'm talking about in this context don't have. The second thing that I like with this model is the booty style construction. So something with the Primus Lite Knit that I know can irk some folks, especially if you have a thicker foot or higher instep, is that the booty style construction, especially the tongue, can dig into the top of your foot. With this model, it's a little bit softer, and so I don't know if that's necessarily going to translate to a lack of security long term, but from a pure comfort standpoint, honestly, this is a nice feature and a nice change of the shoe that gives it a little bit of differentiation between the Primus Lite Knit here, which again, can be a little bit aggressive right here with this material. The third first impression that I have with this model is the outsole. So the sole of this shoe is very grippy. So I like the outsole in this model. I don't think you're gonna have many slip issues. And so this model I think is gonna be really great for both cross training and lifting for most folks. They performed exceptionally well thus far for me. And I think if you do like knit shoes for your training and you want a barefoot shoe, that's where the shoe is going to excel in that context. The fourth first impression that I have with this model is the width. So I really like the width of the forefoot and the midfoot. I almost find that the shoe feels a little bit wider than the Primus Lite Knit. Now that could just be due to the upper being a little bit more lax in this model, but I do feel like it's going to be a really good option for folks who also don't like an aggressive taper through the midfoot going to the forefoot. So if you have a wider foot and if you've been looking for that barefoot shoe for training and you want a model with a little bit of a looser upper, this I think could be a really good option to go with. And then my fifth first impression with this model is that the upper I think breathes a little bit better than other knit models on the market. So for example, compared to the Primus Lite Knit here, I know I'm drawing a lot of conclusions between these shoes, but it is because they are very similar, and I do understand why some folks are very annoyed at the DropZero Laced. I get it. But I find that the knit is a little bit more breathable. It has a bit more ventilation here through the midfoot on the lateral and medial side. So if you want a very lightweight shoe for both summer wear and hotter climates and hotter gyms, I feel like that's where this shoe is going to excel. Now, when talking about sizing and fit of this model does fit true. So I have an E width foot that hovers between like E and double E width, depending on the sizing of the company. And then also I have a normal arch. This shoe fits me really well, and I wear a size 10 in all of my barefoot shoes. So I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this model. But that said, let's go ahead and compare the shoe to the Primus Lite Knit and just do a quick lay of the land of differences to expect with this model and the Primus Lite Knit. All right, so now let's compare the Primus Lite Knit to the TYR DropZero Laced. So up here on the forefoot here, with the DropZero, you have a consistent knit throughout, so you don't really have any overlays. It's pretty breathable, and that runs from the forefoot into the midfoot. With the Primus Lite Knit, you have this TPU overlay, and that's what gives this model a little bit of weird toe break. So that starts to press into your foot over time when you're breaking the shoe in. So that's why I say like the toe break in the DropZero is a little bit better, and that's because the material isn't nearly as aggressive in this shoe. Looking at the midfoot, they have very similar lacing constructions. Now with the DropZero here, you do have a little bit of a change here at the midfoot with the lacing system with these two eyelets, but looking at the overall structure, they are very consistent. I do like how in the DropZero you have 2 additional eyelets back here for lace locking and additional security. I think that's probably designed to combat that this model's upper does feel a little bit more loose and more flexible compared to the Primus Lite Knit, which does have a bit more structure to it. And that's also why I mentioned that this part of the Primus Lite Knit can dig into the top of the foot, especially if you have a higher instep. So just food for thought there. I like the Primus Lite Knit, but there are little subtle flaws that I think shouldn't be happening for $170. Looking at the boots of these shoes, they're also very similar. The only real difference is that over here in the DropZero, you have an outsole wrap here, or a sole wrap on the lateral and medial side of the heel. This does help give you a little bit of structure with your boot. It doesn't have a ton of structure, but again, that TPU layer in this wrap here does give you a tiny bit more. External heel tab, just like in the Primus Lite Knit. And looking at the outsole or the sole design and the tread, with the Primus Lite Knit, you have that stereotypical active sole that comes with all the Primus models. This tread is a little bit less aggressive, it's a little bit smoother. And then over here in the TYR DropZero, you have the same tread pattern that was used in the strap version. This rubber is a little bit more grippy, it's a little bit more resilient, and it gives you a bit more bite on different surfaces. When it comes to width, Both of these shoes are very comparable, but I find that the DropZero actually feels a little bit wider, and I think that has to do with the lighter weight upper constructions. But regarding sizing and fit, length is very consistent. I just think that the TYR DropZero does have a slight bias towards having a bit more width. Overall though, those are like the main construction callouts that I would say really make the most sense to mention for these two shoes, but drop a comment down below if you need additional clarification. All right, y'all, that are my first impressions of the TYR DropZero Laced version. Now, I get why folks are a little bit annoyed at this model. It is very similar to the Primus Lite Knit, but honestly, I feel like most barefoot shoes are these days having more commonalities with one another because there are more options on the market. But all that said, if you don't feel like waiting for my full review and you have questions on this model in the meantime, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.